Picture this. You are sitting at a gas station, watching the numbers spin on the pump. $80, $90, $100 for a tank of gas. Your grocery bill is up. Your electricity bill is up. Your airline ticket for summer vacation just tripled. And somewhere in Washington, the President of the United States, when asked if Americans' financial pain was motivating him to end the war, said 4 words that should make every American's blood boil. Not even a little bit. That was Donald Trump on May 12, 2026, as he boarded Air Force One headed to Beijing. And while he was saying that, a Harvard economist was sitting in Cambridge, Massachusetts, crunching numbers that paint a picture so alarming, so staggering, that even seasoned analysts say they had to double-check their math. The Iran war, she says, will cost American taxpayers at least $1 trillion. $1 trillion. And today we are going to tell you exactly what that means, where every dollar is going, who is paying for it, why the government's own numbers don't add up, and what it means for America's future that the man in charge says he's in no rush to stop any of it. Let's start with the statement that sparked a firestorm. The day after President Donald Trump said he was not in a rush to end the war, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, faced bipartisan questions from Senate and House lawmakers about the cost of the war with Iran, which the Pentagon said is up to $29 billion. But here's the question nobody in the administration seems able to answer clearly. What does not in a rush actually mean when the war is costing $2 billion every single day? Asia Times White House spokesperson Anna Kelly was asked to explain Trump's thinking about high energy prices. Kelly claimed Trump was clear-eyed about the rising gas prices, adding that Iran had been incredibly decimated militarily and totally crippled economically. The president is not in a rush. He has all the cards at his disposal because he knows that Iran is getting weaker and weaker by the day, while the United States is getting stronger and stronger, she said. That is the official White House position. Iran is getting weaker. America is getting stronger. So there's no need to hurry. But here's the problem with that argument, and it's a problem that Harvard University, the American Enterprise Institute, and every independent economist who has studied this conflict has been screaming about for weeks. The cost of waiting is not free, and it is not small, and it is not being paid by anyone in the White House. Washington Times. Linda Bilmes, a senior lecturer in public policy and public finance expert at Harvard's Kennedy School, said, "I am certain we will spend $1 trillion for the Iran war. Perhaps we have already racked up that amount." Let's sit with that number for a moment. $1 trillion. That is $1,000 billion. That is more than the entire GDP of most countries on Earth. That is roughly what America spent on its entire 2-decade war in Afghanistan. And according to Bilmes, the same economist who accurately predicted the true cost of the Iraq war when the government was telling everyone it would cost $50 billion, this war is heading there in a fraction of the time. Wikipedia. The war is costing about $2 billion a day in short-term upfront costs, which is, as Bilmes put it, the tip of the iceberg. $2 billion a day. That's $83 million an hour. $1.4 million a minute. Every minute of every hour of every day, whether there's active fighting or a fragile ceasefire that might collapse tomorrow, the meter is running. And the government has been consistently, systematically, and some would argue, deliberately understating that number. Foreign policy. Here is the timeline of how the government's own cost estimates have ballooned, and it is a masterclass in how wars are always sold cheap and delivered expensive. The Pentagon told Congress the first 6 days alone cost $11.3 billion, nearly $1.9 billion per day, $21,800 per second. All borrowed money added to a $38 trillion national debt. From day one, the rate was breathtaking. Then came the first official estimate to Congress, $25 billion. 2 weeks later, it jumped to $29 billion. Acting Pentagon Comptroller Jules Hurst told lawmakers the updated number comes after accounting for replacement of equipment costs and also just general operational costs to keep people in theater. Vietnam, Al Jazeera. But here's what that $29 billion number still doesn't include. CNN previously reported that the earlier $25 billion estimate was a lowball figure that did not include the cost of repairing damage to U.S. bases in the Middle East. It doesn't include the full cost of restocking America's depleted weapons stockpiles. The Pentagon has requested nearly $1.45 trillion for the coming year's budget, roughly 40% more than what the U.S. spent this fiscal year, as officials cited the need to restock munitions for the war. A 40% increase. The largest proposed expansion in military spending since World War II. And that figure may not even include supplemental financing for the war itself. Defense, vision of humanity. Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna confronted Defense Secretary Hegseth directly during a congressional hearing. You don't know what we paid in terms of the missiles that hit the Iranian school. You don't know what we're paying in terms of gas. You don't know what we're paying in terms of food, Khanna told Hegseth. Your $25 billion number is totally off. Khanna claimed the war would cost about $631 billion, or some $5,000 per household, to the U.S. economy due to increased gas and food prices. $5,000 per household. Not from a tax increase, not from a visible bill, but from the slow, invisible drain of higher prices at every gas station, every grocery store, and every airline terminal in America. Wikipedia. Now let's talk about what Linda Bilmes's $1 trillion projection actually breaks down into, because understanding the math is understanding why wars always end up costing so much more than governments admit. Short-term costs include munitions, missiles, bombs, interceptors, maintenance of 2 to 3 carrier strike groups, maintenance of personnel and combat pay, and lost or destroyed assets such as fighter jets and drones. These are the costs the Pentagon counts, the ones it shows Congress, the visible tip of the iceberg. But then there are the medium and long-term costs that no government ever wants to talk about, because they don't show up on any budget line for years, sometimes decades. Bilmes noted that the daily costs are double the government's estimates, because the government does not take into account the long-term impacts of war, such as long-term veteran disability benefits and damage to key infrastructure that could take years to rebuild. Veterans' health care, disability payments, mental health treatment for soldiers who saw combat. These bills don't arrive until years after the last bomb falls, and they keep coming for decades. After the Vietnam War, America was still paying veterans' disability claims into the 2010s. After the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, the Congressional Budget Office estimated that veterans' costs alone would exceed $1 trillion over the next 40 years. The Iran war will add to that mountain of deferred obligations, and nobody in the government is currently counting it. Small Wars Journal. The White House has asked Congress to boost the U.S. defense budget to $1.5 trillion, which would mean the largest expansion in military spending since World War II. The figure doesn't include the $200 billion that the Pentagon has asked to be put aside specifically for the war in Iran. Bilmes argued that even if Congress does not agree to the full increase, it is highly likely that at least $100 billion per year will be added to the base defense budget that would not have been approved in the absence of this war. $100 billion a year, every year, for years to come, because the depleted stockpiles need to be refilled, because the damaged equipment needs to be replaced, because the military-industrial base needs to be rebuilt. All of it is a consequence of this war. All of it is a cost of this war, and almost none of it is captured in the government's $29 billion figure. Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs. Then there is the debt dimension, and this is where Bilmes's analysis becomes truly alarming. When compared with the Iraq War, which cost $2 trillion in total, debt held by the public during that period was under $4 trillion. Today, it is over $31 trillion, and much of that stems from the previous wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. We are borrowing to finance this war at higher rates, on top of a much larger debt base, Bilmes said. The result is that the interest costs alone will add billions of dollars to the total cost of this war. And unlike the upfront costs, these are costs we are explicitly passing on to the next generation. Small Wars Journal. Read that again. The interest costs alone, just the cost of borrowing the money to pay for this war, will add billions of dollars. America is fighting a $1 trillion war on a credit card that already has $31 trillion on it. And unlike previous wars, Trump implemented the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which extended his 2017 tax cuts, lowering rates for individuals and businesses, meaning America is cutting taxes and increasing military spending at the same time. Cutting taxes and fighting a war simultaneously. That is historically unprecedented in modern American history. Every previous wartime president raised taxes or issued war bonds. Trump is doing the opposite. The bill will come due, and it will be paid by Americans who were children when this war started. Small Wars Journal. Only 22% of Americans approved of Trump's handling of the cost of living. And yet when Trump was directly asked on May 12, 2026, the day his own Pentagon admitted the war cost had jumped from $25 billion to $29 billion, whether the financial strain on Americans was motivating him to reach a deal, his answer was jaw-dropping. "I don't think about Americans' financial situation," Trump told reporters on the White House South Lawn before departing to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing. "I don't think about anybody. I think about one thing. We cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. That's all." Wikipedia, Vision of Humanity. That statement, "I don't think about Americans' financial situation," caused an immediate explosion on Capitol Hill. Vice President J.D. Vance on Wednesday defended Trump and said, "Of course, the administration cares." "I don't think the president said that," Vance added. "But the tape exists. The transcript exists. Trump said it, on camera, on the White House lawn, to a pool of reporters. And what makes it more extraordinary is the context. Gas prices are at their highest in decades, food prices are up, airline tickets have more than doubled, and Harvard University just published a projection saying this war will cost $1 trillion. And the president said he doesn't think about it. IEEE spectrum. Now let's zoom out and look at the nuclear stakes, because this is ultimately the argument the Trump administration uses to justify everything. A senior intelligence official told the Senate Armed Services Committee that Iran is frighteningly close, weeks, a small number of weeks, away from enriching uranium to weapons-grade levels. There's still a weaponization process that happens after that, but they're quite close to constructing nuclear weapons. A nuclear Iran. That is the nightmare scenario. And it is the reason Trump says he doesn't care about the cost. No price is too high to prevent a nuclear-armed Iran, in his view. The question that Congress, the American public, and historians will be debating for years is whether the war has actually made that outcome less likely, or whether it has accelerated it. IEEE spectrum. Israel is concerned that Trump may strike an agreement with Iran before addressing some of the key issues that drove the two countries to launch the war in the first place. A deal that leaves Tehran's nuclear program partially intact while bypassing issues such as ballistic missiles and support for regional proxies would lead to Israel viewing the war as incomplete. One source familiar with the discussion said that Israel understands the missiles and the proxies are probably off the table, as they do not appear to be included in early diplomatic drafts. America's closest ally in the Middle East is worried that Trump will declare victory and make a deal that doesn't actually solve the nuclear problem. Meanwhile, Harvard's expert says that deal, whatever it looks like, will cost America $1 trillion, and Trump says he's in no rush. Global News. Here is the truth that cuts through all the politics, all the rhetoric, and all the numbers. America is in a war that costs $2 billion a day, has no clear end date, and is being financed entirely through borrowed money by an administration that simultaneously cut taxes. The official cost figure, $29 billion, is an accounting fiction that excludes veterans' care, base repair, stockpile replacement, interest on the debt, and the economic damage caused by $4.52 a gallon gas. The real cost, according to the most credible independent expert in America, will reach $1 trillion. I am certain we will reach $1 trillion for the Iran war, Bilmes explained. There are many dangers, but they are not all military threats. Foreign policy. And the man making all of these decisions, the man who launched the war, extended the ceasefire, rejected Iran's peace proposal, and departed for Beijing while his own Congress was demanding answers about a $29 billion bill, said on May 12, 2026 that he is not in a rush. Not in a rush. At $2 billion a day, on top of $31 trillion in national debt, while 22% of Americans approve of his handling of the cost of living, while Harvard says $1 trillion is coming, not in a rush. The American people might beg to differ.